What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted selves. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
And you know, nothing is truer than that. I am so glad you're here. So pleased to be spending this Sunday evening with you. Welcome. Welcome to Who Do You Think You Are? A podcast devoted to your well-being, your emotional truth, and your right to live a life that honors you. On this show, we talk about how to cultivate the highest regard for yourself, how to live from a place of genuine self-respect and self-love, and how to make yourself a priority in your own life. Join me each week for insights and strategies designed to help you drop your psychological masks, connect with your truest essence, and simply live life with more ease. Why? Because we know that when we approach life in this way, we naturally and effortlessly have more room, more generosity, and more love for one another. And as I say each and every week, dear friends, wide receivers, when have we needed love more than this very day, than this very November 9th? We need it more tonight than we needed it last Sunday, and we'll need it next Sunday even more than we need it tonight. So this is all about how to really step into your highest self, your best self, your most loving self, by removing barriers and layers of defenses and masks and shields and cover-ups and walls and all the things that create the illusion that you and I are separate. Yes, we have separate suits of, flesh. Yes, it looks like you are you and I am me. But actually, on another level, there is no separation. There is no separation. No more than the sunbeams are separate from the sun itself, or the waves are separate from the ocean. You and I are intricately connected. In fact, we are one. So I welcome you. I want to mention something very important before we dive in tonight, and it's a reminder. This show is a space. I hope you find it a peaceful, sacred space to explore emotions, to look at our inner landscape, to examine our own life stories. We share points of view here, but this is not a substitute in any way for professional psychological support or psychotherapy. So please, if you find yourself in pain tonight, if you're hurting, if you're struggling with something that really has you and you just don't feel like yourself, please call someone. Let someone support you. Let someone accompany you. No one else has the answers, but a qualified professional has the right questions for you. So don't white knuckle it. Don't go it alone. Let someone be there for you. Let someone know you, hear you. Let someone walk you through. All right. If I can be of any help, please contact me. Just drop me an email at Catherine@CatherineDuca.com. That's easy enough. Catherine@CatherineDuca.com. Let me know what you need. If I can help you with a resource or a referral, I would be all too happy to do that. Okay? So open up to help. You'll be glad you did. The other thing is, if you find the content on this show valuable, I hope you do, please subscribe, like, and share. If you know someone who could benefit from this content, drop them the link or turn them on to the program. Hopefully there's something for everyone here. So, not to mention, that word, the A word, algorithm, if it's satisfied, it shows the program to more and more viewers. And that's a good thing. So a big welcome to all of you listeners, wide receivers. Let's get here tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about actually I consider it a very sweet topic. So I have dispensed with my lists and my 5 ways to do that and 3 steps to that. And I'm going to be speaking largely from the heart tonight. And I invite you, those of you who have access to the chat, if you would like to participate in the conversation, co-create the show with me, please do. Or if you'd like to leave a comment or ask a question, just do so in the chat. I'll be happy. Any and all are welcome here, as long as it's within the scope of what I can address on a show like this. So with that said, let's kind of take a breath in, and let's release some of that stress that, we're all carrying. We're all carrying. And I invite you to come into this space with me tonight, this shared space, this sacred space. Come in gently and easily, knowing that you and I think everyone listening tonight and in the days and weeks to come on the rebroadcast, we all want the same things. We all want the same things. We all want to be seen without having to perform, don't we? We all want to be held in our complexity, not just in our ability to be useful. We all want to be loved in our becoming, in the messy evolution of our true self, not just in our arrival. And perhaps more importantly, we all want to feel as though we are not alone. We all want to feel as though we are not alone. But friends, we know that many among us feel exactly that. This very night, while you and I are talking, there are people who are not listening, and they are anywhere and everywhere else, and they feel a sense of loneliness and aloneness and abandonment, and they feel forgotten. I don't think any of us can be truly awake today, in these times, in this turbulence, and not be in some level of pain. If you're awake, you are hurting on some level. With that said, though, I invite us to try something. With the knowledge that people are hurting, people are suffering, there is heartbreak all over the world tonight. I invite you to be mindful of that, but let that gently recede into the background tonight. I invite you to allow what's happening out there to just back up a little bit so that we can be present to everything that's happening in here, within each one of us. Because I'll tell you, if we are not only to get through this turbulent time, unprecedented, how often is that word used? It gets more and more unprecedented by the minute. But if we are to allow ourselves to get through this time intact, and not to mention become agents of change and make a contribution to this planet and make the lives of our brothers and our sisters easier, then who we are becoming during this time is more important than ever before. So Tonight, as we come together in this sacred space, it is in this spirit, the spirit of holding one another up so that we can make the contribution. It is in this spirit that I come to you tonight. So I said we have a sweet topic. I think it's sweet. It's tender, actually. It's not delightful, I would say, but it's kind of raw and kind of tender. If you've been with me these past couple of episodes, you know that we've been talking about this thing that we do, certainly in this culture. And this thing that we do is we disconnect from ourselves. We emotionally, psychologically disconnect from ourselves. And I would say in disconnecting from ourselves, we also obscure our connection to the divine because we're at odds with ourselves. We're not an open channel. We're not the kind of vessel with which to receive divine inspiration. So when we leave ourselves behind, when we abdicate our own well-being, our own needs, our own self-trust, we abandon ourselves. And I've been talking about this. And I highlighted last week the supreme irony that the reason we do these things, swallow our emotions, tamp down our feelings, anesthetize ourselves, go numb, deny parts of ourselves that we judge, project them onto other people and then judge them. All the fancy footwork that we do to stay in the good graces of other people, to be accepted, to be liked. All those things that we do are a form of self-abandonment. And the irony is we do those things to keep ourselves from being abandoned by these other people. Now, these other people might be people whom we actually know in our lives. It could be our family members. It could be the people in our immediate orbit. But it can also be the world at large. Because when we have a way of taking our micro issues, our, things that happen to us personally and intimately, conflicts that we have, and we have a way of generalizing them to the outside world. And so we can relate to the world at large in a way where we believe we have to be a certain way. We can't just be who we are. We have to be a certain way. We have to play to a certain audience. And the way we depict that audience in our own minds has everything to do with the lens through which we are looking out into the world. And if we perceive a judgmental world, we are just reflexively going to contract. We're going to shrink. We're going to play it so safe and play it so damn beige that no one can get us. No one can hurt us. Call it people pleasing. It certainly is that. Call it manipulating interactions to get people to like you. Call it hiding. All of these things are ways that we try to keep ourselves from being left by other people, pushed away, rejected. But in so doing, here's the punchline, we abandon ourselves. So how's that for irony? How's that for paradox? So the past couple of weeks, we've been looking at ways in which we can take small risks, make small experiments, test out what it might be like to use our own voice. That might look like raising your hand somewhere or speaking up somewhere and saying, I disagree, or I have another point of view, or I look at that issue differently. I view it differently. Um, you know, if someone expects you to be agreeable and like something, let's say you're going through a big change and you're not crazy about that change, but other people are counting on you to like it as much as they do and go through it happily, and you don't feel happy about it. That may be your truth. I just don't feel happy about it. If you're pressuring yourself to be happy when you're not, or appear happy when that's antithetical to how you feel, this is an example of, suppressing, swallowing your truth to make someone else happy. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that the antidote to that is just to be all about me, 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 me. I don't care what other people think. I'm going to do me, the me. When was the me generation? That time has come in and gone. In that sense, I think what this day is asking of us, this time in our lives is asking of us, is to be fair, to be, in a sense, democratic, to treat ourselves as we treat other people in the way, if we're mindful of other people's feelings and we want to be tuned in to how other people feel, let's afford that same benevolence and generosity to ourselves. So it's about being, uh, equal opportunity friends to ourselves. So in our past conversations, we talked about taking these small experiments, and I've actually heard from a number of listeners and clients, and people who've been tuning in, and they have made some small experiments. They've said, "I know you want me to be happy about this. I know you're happy about it, this change that we're going through, but I have to tell you, I'm not. I'm not happy, and that's just the way it is right now." And what I'm hearing is that taking a step like that can bring up all kinds of discomfort. It can bring up a kind of awkwardness or a kind of emotional clumsiness, or you're not feeling sure about yourself. You're feeling quite uncertain. Why is that? Well, a perfectly good explanation. That's because when we want to make a change in our life, a deep change, when we want to be someone who has a voice and uses it and inhabits this one life on this plane, inhabits it, completely, and is alive in our skin, if we want to do that where we haven't, we don't get to be like that all of a sudden. Just because it dawns on us that we've been swallowing our truth, we don't go, "Oh, I see. That's what I've been doing. Okay, I won't do that anymore." It just simply does not work like that. And if anyone tells you it does, I don't know, ask again. It doesn't. And this is where, through that discomfort, people can feel, and I'm wondering if you have experienced this, people can feel this vague sensation of uncertainty and I don't know who I am, because they're beginning to let go of an identity that no longer serves them. Okay? Whether I say the collective we or you, I mean you and me, because I practice this too. Not a day goes by, no matter how much therapy I've had, no matter what I do for a living, I still have to do this all the time, or else I get rusty. So I have to keep it fresh and I have to keep it current. And I keep meeting my growth edge, because in certain situations, this is not that difficult for me. But then I find that in other situations, it is difficult. And I have to apply everything I'm sharing here with you tonight. I have to apply it to myself. And who would I be if I didn't? If I just suggested you do this, but I didn't work out with you. That's why I consider myself, as I said before, an aerobics instructor. You know, I'm working out with you. I'm not just over here telling you, do this, do that. So when we begin to let go of the old, but we don't yet have something to replace it with, what happens? We inevitably and predictably and quite on schedulely pass through this space, this psychological, psychic, emotional space within that feels very wobbly. It feels wobbly because we're not anchored in our old identity, right? And so how else can we feel but a little anxious? How else can we feel? So that period of time, that phase or that portal or that hallway, if you will, between here and there, how I've been my entire life and how I would like to show up, that space calls for something. It doesn't call in there's a time and a place for this, but I don't believe in this space it calls for grit. I don't think so. I think what it calls for is grace. Grace. Grace is when we kind of place if you can imagine, place our hand on our own back or shoulder gently to say, it's okay that you don't know. It's okay. It's okay that you haven't arrived at the destination of being who you want to be. It's okay that you're here. You're unfolding, you're emerging. I think those are such beautiful words because they reflect a beautiful concept, emerging. And I think in our society today, with all of the things, you know, the sound bites, the memes, the posts, you know, we want quick answers. We want to look more than ever like we're one of those people, like we've got it together, like we are living our life with some sort of, I don't know, glamorized filter, if you will, right? But the fact of the matter is deep change, evolution, metamorphosis, I spoke last time of the butterfly, requires time but not just time. I'll tell you why. But time and grace. The reason I say it doesn't just require time is because in this period of awkwardness, this is when many of us say, uh-oh, WTF, I don't like this, you know? Say I have a parent who can be controlling, it's her way or the highway, and she wants something of me, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't work for me. Whatever it is, you know, fill in the blank. But the expectation of you did not land in a way that you today want to fulfill. So you say your no in however you language it, right? And let's say you detect a hint of disapproval, or maybe more than a hint. Maybe the person says, oh, you know, and very overtly criticizes you. This is when many of us throw in the towel and we say, well, this is why I've never done this. And I don't like the way this feels. And I don't know what that Duca person was talking about. This does not work for me. And what happens? We run back to home plate. We return to what we know. But what I want you to know is that discomfort And clumsiness means it's reflecting back to you that you're right on schedule, because you can't make the change without feeling the discomfort. You can't let go of the familiar and get to the other side without kind of floating along the way. And when you float, as in water, right? You want to learn how to tread to keep yourself from what? Sinking, of course. But if you can't hold yourself up but more than, a few moments, and then you race back to the side of the pool where it's secure, you're not going to get to the other side. So you understand the analogy, right? So what I'm asking you to reflect on here is your own awkwardness and clumsiness and uncertainty as you move through this newer way of being. Because here's the coming attraction. If suppressing your true self has left you the way you know it has left you, you feel hollow, you feel controlled, you feel secretly resentful under your mask of I'm fine. You know the way that feels. And if you have a few years of that or a few decades of that, somewhere deep within you're not happy. And then on top of that, you're not showing that you're unhappy, and you're trying not even to go there. So a tighter mask gets superimposed on the previous masks. And this is how many of us walk around, and we relate to each other mask to mask. My I'm fine meets your always apologizing for everything, apologizing for the space you take up. My overcompetence meets your need to be a victim, take the victim stance. None of us are being our true, authentic selves. So it's a wonder how anything gets done in this world when we walk around mask to mask. Oh, come to think of it, a lot of things aren't working in this world right now. I wonder why. So, friends, I ask you to ponder your own journey, your own willingness to take a risk away from what you've known and clung to your whole life in terms of these masks, and make these small experiments. I ask you to look at what comes up for you. This discomfort, incidentally, is going to show up in just a few specific ways. So notice this. It shows up somatically. It shows up in the body. This dysregulation, this dissonance is going to register as bodily discomfort. You're going to feel a tightness in your chest, or a lump in your throat, or your temples are going to throb, or your muscles are going to tense, or your shoulders are going to some manifestation of I'm out of my comfort zone. And how you respond to that makes all the difference in terms of taking your next step. Because really what's called for here is discomfort tolerance. That's the language that we psychotherapists use. Discomfort tolerance. It simply means exercising the muscle of tolerating discomfort. Now, of course, I know I don't have to mention this, but I will anyway. I'm not talking about if you're in a relationship that feels abusive or that is abusive. I'm not saying you tolerate that. Okay, of course I'm not saying that. I'm saying in the bell curve of experiences of life where you know that you have been hiding your true self out of a fear of judgment. That's really what I'm talking about. This is your invitation to look at the process. What many people do as they're getting ready to return to their safe place or their familiar place is they do one of two things I've found in my work with clients. Oh, and in my own life. They do one of two things. They either rationalize, justify, rationalize. These are two defense mechanisms. Well, I did this, but the other person just made it impossible for me to stick to my truth because there was a consequence there. They criticized me. They had something to say. They were snarky. They withheld something. They made it very unpleasant. So I need to do what I need to do to go back to that equilibrium. So they either rationalize or they enter this place of, now this is a more nuanced concept. They enter a place of self-forgiveness in an effort to be done with the discomfort. And in one's head, the self-forgiveness might sound something like, I did the best I could, it didn't work. But I did the best I could. So it's okay, and I'm okay. And then they try to start over again. Now, I want to emphasize this, okay? Forgiveness is the bottom line, I believe. Forgiveness is what frees us from our suffering. So I'm all about forgiveness. Absolutely. Self-forgiveness and, forgiveness of one another. In an atmosphere of truly understanding, we're all doing the best we can. We all had childhoods. We were all raised by imperfect caregivers who themselves had imperfect caregivers who themselves on and on and on. So in that sense, it's imperative that we at least be willing to forgive one another and forgive ourselves for not knowing any better. But here's why I say forgiveness can be an impediment at this stage. Hear me out. Hear me out. It's the timing of it. It's the timing. If we forgive ourselves or someone else prematurely to get out of our discomfort, then that's not the kind of forgiveness that's going to be sustainable or that's going to make us feel whole. If our underlying agenda, and if you do this, you have to maybe listen carefully to yourself, is to just smooth things over and, make your stomach feel a little better or ease that knot in your chest. Right? So it's the premature nature of forgiveness. I'll tell you what I mean before I take a short break. This is not with self directly, but it applies. So often a client will come in and they'll describe their childhood and they'll even maybe highlight some conflict, deep, long-standing conflict with a parent. And they'll say, but I know my mother did the best she could. And here's what happens more often than not. That I know she did the best she could is, I believe, probably a true statement, because I believe the overwhelming majority of us do the best we can, even if we are horrendously off the mark. All right. But when I call it rushing in to forgive, because we like, we like the sound of that, or we want to truly be someone who forgives. If we do that, here's the whole thing. Before we have acknowledged and understood the impact of the caregiver's errors on us, then we lack the insight to really make a wholehearted, forgiving statement. Because I believe it is only after we are able to say, you know what, I needed my mother's approval back then. I needed her backing. I needed her to have my back. I needed her nurturance, her understanding, her patience. I needed her presence. I needed her to stay, for heaven's sakes. I needed her to be sober. I needed her, all the things. It's until we acknowledge what we needed and then went without and how that felt and feel that and move through that pain. Forgiveness is a panacea. It's not really, in my view, I'd love to know what you think, is not really forgiveness. Or at least it's not forgiveness on the level that can really, truly liberate yourself and the other person in your eyes. So this is what I mean. There is a difference with a distinction between giving ourselves and one another grace and rushing to this forgiving stance. Forgiveness is a destination. It kind of says, okay, I'm done with this. I feel complete. And maybe you do, but I ask you to examine it more deeply. Is this because you're in a hurry to feel better or make the other person feel better? Or is this because you've really done the work of asking yourself, how have you felt about all of this? Where are you in all of this? And, locate yourself. Because when you locate yourself, you can then be present to yourself. And that's what grace is. It's not a destination. It's honoring your presence while you're clumsy, while you're awkward, while you're unsure and uncertain. The way you would coax a child with swimmies to keep coming toward you. Keep coming toward you. I've got you. I've got you. I'm right in front of you. I'm not going to let anything happen. I'm right here. Treat yourself like a kid with swimmies. That's what grace is. And I think it's the sweetest thing we can do for ourselves. I even love the sound of it. Give yourself grace. Because I think it's the best way to earn your own trust. It's the best way to get to be your own anchor, to create your own inner net, your safety net, instead of needing external validation and everyone to like you, instead of having that as your safety net, because you and I know that's no net. Sure, as long as it's going well, but what happens when things don't go well, right? That's an invitation to spiral. But this notion of grace and accompanying yourself more and more and more is really how you strengthen your muscle, deepen your resolve, embrace your own conviction, and tell yourself you are worth your own discipline, your own effort, and your own encouragement along the way. Because I promise you this, that the more you do this and the more you get to the other side, and that goes deeper and deeper and deeper, it's not one and done, the more you have something miraculous, It shouldn't be miraculous, but it is in our sense of reality today. You don't have amnesia about your issues, but what you do have is more of yourself, more of yourself, more of your truth. And nothing feels as good as that. I promise you, no amount of agreement from another person, no amount of external validation feels as good as your own, as having your own back. So, grace, grace. So, this is how we not only heal ourselves, how we begin to heal ourselves, because grace is a process. Grace honors the self that didn't know this stuff before now, or wasn't willing to take make the experiment until now. So it is grace that places its hand on our shoulder and says, it's okay. It's okay. I'll hold you as you move through this. And it is grace, I would say, in a probably non-scientific term, that allows our, you hear all this talk about dysregulation and the nervous system going, haywire when we get overstimulated or overwhelmed. It's so true. I think it is grace itself that begins to calm our nervous system. And when we do that, we can bring our common sense back, because the prefrontal cortex right here in the front of our heads, comes back online. We can access that region of our brain, and we can then begin to have clarity and problem solve. But if we're foggy, if we're scrambling, if we have that kind of vibration, we're not going to help ourselves. And then by extension, we can't help anyone else. So this is the case. I hope I've made it reasonably well for welcoming the period of grace in your own transformation. I think it precedes forgiveness. As important, I believe, as all important as forgiveness is, we'll get to it, interestingly, more quickly and more completely if we pass through grace before we feel we must forgive. So forgiveness is important, but forgiveness comes first. So again, it's how we learn to trust ourselves. I'll tell you something. I really wish I knew about this when I was, years ago on my own journey. I'm glad I came to it when I did. But if I had known this earlier in my life, well, number one, hey, I would have saved a lot of money in therapy, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of frustration. And I think I would have enjoyed the process more. So I offer this in the spirit that you will try it on. And the next time you feel uncomfortable, which could be in the next 10 minutes, if you choose to experiment, I hope you'll remember this conversation and be good to yourself, because grace, growing, evolving, is not an endpoint. It's not a destination. It is a threshold. It's a portal. So let's help one another walk through it. All right. Notice what self-abandonment feels in your body this week, and take a risk. Take a small risk. And then notice the awkwardness, and then notice what a little bit of grace feels like. See if it eases that knot in your stomach. See what it does to your shoulders. See what it does to the quality of your spoken voice. I think your voice becomes more resonant as you become more attuned to your true self. So Dear friends, wide receivers, that's it for tonight. I wish you well. I will think of all of you doing this work, doing this sacred work of not only taking care of yourself, but being yourself. Because I don't think it's about changing who you are. It's about revealing who you are and being who you are. So with that, know that you are loved, and much, much, much more than that. You are love. So spread that around. Okay. Until next week, I wish you well. Have a good night. I'm Catherine Duca. You've been listening to Who Do You Think You Are? I'll meet you back here next week. Good night.